Good morning and welcome to Burlington United Methodist Church. My name's Ed Armantrout and I'm the pastor here. This morning's scripture is from Luke. It's chapter 12, verses 13 through 21. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told him a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich towards God." So I called this message Stuff, because we have lots of stuff. And so when this starts out, it wasn't unusual for the rabbi to settle disputes among the temple followers in that region. So that was pretty normal. But in this case, Jesus refused to get involved in this dispute over the inheritance over money, but it did give him the opportunity to tell the group what his thoughts were on material goods. Now, before we start that, as some of you know, I was a banker for 40-some years. And have you ever noticed how many of these storage unit barns there are up around your area? And I financed a number of those complexes of barns. And the one thing that always amazed me was that no matter where I was and no matter how many around me had been built, when you called, they were always full. Now, in case you didn't note this, that if you don't pay your rent on those, they can open them up and sell the stuff at auction. So you'll see these auctions periodically, and they can apply that against the rent you're owed. Now, the ones that I financed, I would ask the guys what they do with the stuff. And one of the things that amazed me, they will tell me that once they opened them, probably half the time they were completely empty, which means people were paying rent for an area that didn't have anything in it. Or when they opened it up, it was just junk. There wasn't anything in there that anybody would pay anything for. And so when we talk about stuff here, that's what I picture. People keeping things, items, material goods that just really aren't necessary. And in case you've never noticed, I bet you've never seen a Brinks truck in a funeral procession. So you can't take the stuff with you. So keep that in mind as we go through this message. So let's talk about the man with abundant possessions. He never really thought anything except about himself. There was no way he was ever going to give away a single dime penny, anything away. He just wasn't going to do that. Now, I was at a Kiwanis meeting this week, and they were talking about people working towards your community and doing things for the people around you. And one of the speakers had a quote, and he said his mom told him this. Now, I don't know where the mom got it from, so if you've heard it from somebody else, I've already qualified my stealing of his as I don't really know where it came from. A man wrapped up in himself, so it's all about him, is a very small man. And I think that's what we learn from this scripture. It's pretty easy to keep stuff to yourself and not share. So this guy's trying to find happiness in keeping all of his precious, in quotes, possessions. But again, it's just stuff. Now, I like to quote John Wesley whenever I can, kind of the starter, the founder of the Methodist Church. And so he had a motto. His motto was, earn all you can, save all you can, and give all you can. So for him, it wasn't earning by any way. It was earning by an honest living, being fair with people. Save all you can means save up what you can with what you've earned honestly. And then you're able to give all you can. So I'm going to be teaching a Dave Ramsey class that's going to begin in September, and we'll talk about that more in the future videos. But one of the things that Dave talks about, if you don't have yourself in a financial position in the right place, then it's hard for you to tithe back to your church. It's hard for you to give to your community because you don't have the personal discipline that you need to do that. And so in this guy's case, he was plenty good at getting stuff. He just was awful at giving it back to anybody. And so the guy never saw beyond today. He was only looking out for himself and all he needed. And so in the commentary I was reading, the guy told a story. And so this could be a plumber, an electrician. You can pick it, the person, but it's a younger person just starting his career and an older man who's near the end of his career. And so the older man says to the younger man, he says, so what's your plan and what's your goal through life? And so we'll say he's a plumber. And he says, well, I'm going to learn from you how to be a really good plumber. And he says, okay, and then what? And he said, well, then I'm going to set up my own business. And he said, I'm going to be the best plumber around. And the old man says, well, then what? He said, well, I'm going to be such a good plumber, he said, I'm going to make a fortune with all the money that I've raised. And then he said, well, then what? And he said, well, I'm going to grow old and I'm going to live on all that money. And he said, I'm going to be one of the wealthiest men around. And then the old man said to him, then what? Because he was only thinking about his lifetime on earth. He wasn't thinking about how he was going to go in the future, how God was going to look upon him at his time of death, whenever that occurs in his life, and say, what did you do for fellow man? Were you so interested in learning a trade, growing your business, becoming the wealthiest you can, just spending money on yourself, that you never took into consideration those people around you? So I have a story I'm going to tell about Steve Gill. Now, I didn't ask Steve's permission, but I don't remember him saying this in a vacuum. I think there was other people around, and so I'm going to quote him. So if you don't know Steve Gill, he and his brother owned Gill Brothers Furniture. I know Steve's retired a couple of years ago because I ran into him. We found a pizza place that we both liked. And if you didn't know it, Steve and his brother and Gill Brothers, they sponsor a lot of different not-for-profits in the community. But where I got to know Steve was on a Better Ways board. He was on the board, and even when he was no longer on the board, he and his brother were very nice to A Better Way and sponsored events and just did wonderful things for the organization. And one day I was talking to Steve, and it wasn't at a board meeting, I forget where we were, and I said, it's just so nice that, Gill Brothers and you and your brother support so many things in the community. And I said, you just do a lot of wonderful things. I said, I don't even think that people realize how many things you support. And he said, well, he said, I appreciate that you recognize that, Ed. But he said, my brother and I have a kind of a motto that we live by. And I said, well, what is it? He said, you cannot outgive God. Well, I don't know that he shares that very often, but he should. In fact, he should get that copyrighted because that's a really good one. But I think that's something in this scripture for all of us to remember. We can't outgive God. And whether we have a little or a lot, we are really pretty abundant in what we have. And so what I suggest to you is that in your abundance, whatever that is for you, that you find a person or a place, whether that's a church or part of a church or some organization, that you can share your wealth. It doesn't always have to be money that you share with, even though that's kind of what this scripture is about, because it's about stuff, as I called it. But sometimes it's your talent and your abilities, whether that's the ability to help them get something done, whether it's the ability to help lead them into a new direction. But God has given us all gifts. And I would really, really strongly encourage to use those abundance of gifts that God has given you and share them with the world. I'd like to thank you for being here today. The upside of doing these videos is I can pretty much say whatever I want unless Tim edits me out. So one of the things I'm going to say today is it's my grandson's 7th birthday today, so I'm going to wish him a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Sawyer. Looking forward to seeing you in church. Again, we meet every Sunday. Church school begins at 9:30 and the regular service is at 10:45. Thank you.